The Awesome Tragedy of Audrey Munson's Strange Life. The girl whose picture, Heedless Moths, picturing her studio life, attracted so much attention. Movie Weekly, July 1st, 1922. I sought death because I had no wish to live. I am already dead, save for the fact that my body still breathes, and blood flows through my veins. But so far as hope or joy or expectation for the future goes, my life is past. What is the use of moving about and breathing when all desire for life has ceased? I longed for death, and I tried to die. They brought me back to life, and now I do not care anymore. Whether I live or die, it doesn't matter. These are the words that Audrey Munson, known a few short years ago as the world's most perfect model, spoke to a representative of the Movie Weekly, who called upon her in the humble little cottage in the village of Mexico, where a few days ago she attempted to take her life by swallowing a solution of bichloride of mercury. The girl is thin almost to emaciation. Her cheeks are hollow. Her eyes shine like burning coals from their sockets. Her restless fingers are like claws. So little remains of the Audrey Munson who was the most beautiful of models and the idol of the motion picture world that it is pitiable to trace the resemblance. The voice which comes from the pale lips, too, is toneless. The girl looks as she might if she lay in her coffin, save for the burning coals of eyes. "There is a curse on me," she said simply. "There has been a curse upon me for years." And she believes it, this girl with the face of the dead, and the fleshless form, and the flashing eyes. And who knows, it may be true. "I suppose that I have had everything," she says drearily. "Beauty and admiration and love and fame. But the curse has taken them all away. I am forgotten and cast aside. Why didn't I die? Oh, why didn't I die? Perhaps I might have found peace. Now there is neither peace nor rest for me. Just the hopelessness of death without the quiet of the grave." When she was a child, Audrey Munson had her fortune told by a gypsy crone, who predicted that by her beauty she should rise to high places in the world, and by her beauty she should be cast down. "You shall be beloved and famous," said the gypsy woman. "But when you think that happiness is yours, its Dead Sea fruit shall turn to ashes in your mouth. You who shall throw away thousands of dollars as a caprice shall want for a penny. You who shall mock at love shall seek love without finding. 7 men shall love you. 7 times you shall be led by the man who loves you to the steps of the altar, but never shall you wed." When Audrey Munson first became an artist model, she was 14 years old. She had started on the stage in the chorus of a summer show running at the casino. One day, as she was walking downtown after a rehearsal, she saw a middle-aged man following her and her mother who was with her. He came up with them and asked whether Audrey might not pose for him for photographic art studies used in magazines. Her mother consented, and for more than a year, she went several times a week to his studio, posing in Greek and Roman draperies, now as a naiad, now as a dryad, now as a caryatid, as Venus, the goddess of beauty, and as Diana, the goddess of wisdom and war. Then she was induced to pose for the nude. "After all that I had learned about the beauty of the human form, looked upon in the abstract, it never seemed wrong or improper," she said. One day, her old friend was found dead in his bed. On the day before his death, he had asked his girl model to be his wife. She liked and respected him, and had made up her mind to accept the proposal when he died. At his studio, the girl had met many famous artists, and she decided to seek work as a model. She was employed by A.B.E. Wenzel, Howard Chandler Christie, Irving R. Wiles, and other prominent painters and illustrators. She was a favorite model with sculptors, and posed for the female figures on the Court of Honor modeled by Isidore Conti for the Panama Pacific Exposition. She was the original of Weinman's Descending Night, and she sat to Daniel Chester French as Evangeline. Every studio knew her, and her work brought her in thousands of dollars. Then she went into the movies. She acted in Inspiration, Purity, and Girl of My Dreams. Artists, sculptors, and moving picture producers were bidding for her. She went on the stage and posed for art studies, and chiefly for her was written The Fashion Show that made such a hit at the Palace Theater. It was during the run of this feature, Miss Munson says, that the curse fell upon her. Hear the story from her own lips. It was when I was playing in the fashion show, she said. A man prominent in the theatrical world came into my dressing room. I was in a bathing suit. He passed his arm around me and pressed his burning lips against my shoulder. I struggled to free myself. I struck at him. "Get away from me," I cried out. "Don't touch me. I hate you. Your touch is repulsive to me. I would rather have a snake crawl over me than to feel your hand upon me." He released his hold. "Do you mean what you have just said?" he asked. "I do," I replied defiantly, but even as I spoke, I shuddered. "You will have cause to remember this," he said, and left me. A few days later, I was told that the fashion show was to close. I had no explanation. The playlet had been drawing immense houses, but it was closed at almost a moment's notice. Later, it was put on again with another to wear the gowns I had worn, the dainty negligées, the bathing suit, and the rest, which they had said no one could wear but me. I went everywhere and tried to obtain an engagement on the stage or screen. There was no place for me. Even the studios of the artists and sculptors were closed against me. There were excuses in the latter case, of course. It was wartime. Many painters and sculptors were in France. Those who remained were finding no market for work. I offered my services to the government in an effort to trail down German spies. My offer was accepted, but soon I became conscious that the powers had no confidence in me. I was watched more closely than I tried to watch those whom I was told to shadow. Since the death of my old friend, who was so good and kind to me, I had had several lovers, men who declared that they were mad about me. 3 times I was ready to be married, when a cloud arose, and my dream was over. It was the curse. But I could not believe that all my chance for happiness was blighted. I was hopeful until the last horror entered my life. The time that Mrs. Julia Wilkins was murdered at her home at Long Beach, Long Island, and her husband, Dr. Walter Keane Williams, was arrested. My mother and I had occupied a room in the Wilkins home. I had scarcely, in all the time that I stayed there, seen the doctor, except to pass him in the halls and say good morning to him. One day, Mrs. Wilkins came to me. "I am sorry, Audrey," she said, "but I must ask you to leave my house as soon as you can." "What have I done?" I cried. She laid her hand on my arm. "Poor child," she said. "So far as I know, you have done nothing. But I have been warned that there is a curse upon you, and that if I keep you in my house, ill luck will fall upon me." I had hopes of going abroad to pose for a new picture in England. I besought her to let me stay until I could make my arrangements to sail. She consented, but my plans fell through, and Mother and I went to Toronto. We had been there only a few days when we heard that Mrs. Wilkins had been murdered, and the doctor arrested. And the newspaper reports went on to say that the detectives were looking for me, because a picture postcard of me had been found in the doctor's rooms, and they believed that he had killed his wife in order to marry me. It was a lie. Of course it was a lie. I had scarcely spoken to the man in my life. I hurried to New York and talked with the district attorney of the county. He believed my story. He had to believe it. But the curse followed me. And when Dr. Wilkins hanged himself in his cell, many thought that I was the cause. One afternoon, I went to the theater. 2 women came and sat in the same row next to me. They looked at me, and one whispered to the other, "That is Audrey Munson, the wicked woman who was the cause of the Wilkins murder." And they moved their seats. A few days later, I was waiting for a Fifth Avenue stage, and I heard a girl say to the man beside her, "That is Audrey Munson, the girl that old man in Long Island killed his wife for." I felt that I must get away from everything. I went to Chicago. I gave dancing lessons there for a while, but my pupils fell off, and I had a serious illness. I was sent to Syracuse, my old home, by charity. This was in the latter part of 1920. I looked for work everywhere. I tried to get a position as an apprentice in the public library at 15 cents an hour. I asked for positions behind the counter. I tried to sell tickets on the only 2 treasures that were left me, a bronze statuette by Ulysses Reese and a portrait bust by Daniel Chester French. But I asked $1 for the tickets, so I could not sell many. And what money I got, I had to spend for food. One day, I went into a newspaper office and asked the editor to put in a report of my death. I thought that if it were believed that I were dead, The persecution which had been hounding me might cease. But he only laughed at me. But from that fact, I received some help which made me feel for a little while as though life were not over yet. Friends heard of my plight and came to my relief, and for a little while I thought that something good might still be in store for me. There was talk of starring me in another picture, and a start was made which ended in nothing. I went with my mother to a little place at Mexico that my father had owned. There I tried to lose myself in the pleasures of country life and to forget everything else. One day, in talking with a newswriter of my acquaintance, I happened to remark that if I ever married, I wanted to find a perfect specimen of physical manhood, so that if we were blessed with children, they might be as nearly physically perfect as God meant the human race to be. The first thing I knew, I saw the story in the papers. I must have had 1,000 letters from all parts of the country. I never realized that there were so many men in the world who considered themselves the ideal of physical beauty. Some among the letters appealed to me. I answered them. They seemed simple and earnest, but like every other dream, that was cast aside. And then, I loved. A man came into my life for whom I felt the mad, wild adoration that only the fervid spirit of a loving woman can know. And I felt that I was loved with all the mighty strength of a strong man's nature. His name is Joseph A. Stevenson, and his home is at Ann Arbor, Michigan. For a few weeks, I was madly happy as I never had been and never could have dreamed of being. And then the blow fell. Last Saturday night, a telegram was brought me. No human being shall ever know what it contained, but when I had read it, I knew that the end of life had come for me. I thought everything over calmly. Then I went to my room and dissolved 4 biochloride tablets in water and drank off the draught. I lay down, thankful, oh, so thankful, to die. There, my mother found me. She screamed and gave an alarm, and doctors dragged me back to life. And I don't care now. I am dead. And after all, what does it matter whether a corpse walks the earth or lies in the grave? I wanted to die. Now I don't care, for I am dead. I am dead, and neither love nor hate nor the curse that is on me can touch me anymore.